Welcome to The World Today. I'm WAQAS MAJEED Khan. Today we're covering three stories in our program. The first one is to do with the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's statement in China. He has stressed the need for a meaningful dialogue among regional players. Very important statement by our Foreign Minister. We must talk about that in some detail. Our second topic is to do with the three people who have lost their lives. Many were wounded in a tram shooting in Holland. We'll talk about that also. And Donald Trump has complained that he's being blamed for the New Zealand attack, and he does not believe that white nationalism is on the rise. We'll talk about that in some detail as well. Let me introduce my guests in the studio for the conversation. Joining me today, first of all, we have retired Major ADNAN QAISER Saab with us, and with him we have SALMAN BETTANI. Thank you very much, sir, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum to all your viewers.
Sir, let's start with the statement of our Foreign Minister saying that meaningful dialogue between neighboring countries for ensuring peace in South Asia is a must. And he said that while attending a think tank conference in China. What do you make of this statement, sir, and what exactly does he mean by a meaningful dialogue?
You see, thank you very much for inviting me once again. It's always a delight to be with you. So first of all, understand this Afghan conundrum has been ongoing for the past about 40 years or so. First we had Afghan Jihad, and then this war on terror in whatever manifestation it took place. And Pakistan has always held a principal stance that first of all, this is a political solution, a political issue which needs to be addressed politically. There is no military solution to that, so that's why people, all the stakeholders need to sit together. And they need to first of all diagnose the problem and then prescribe its prescription. Unfortunately, that has not been done. And allow me to share a pun with you internationally. It used to be said that what stays on the ground while traveling around the world? Afghanistan's peace process. And you have seen it, we had seen the London conferences, whatever the Munich, the Germany, the Bonn process, Heart of Asia, Istanbul process, the RECA, and then we had our own quadrilateral framework, and now the latest Moscow format, and then the Beijing talks. So this, there are too many cooks. Unfortunately, it's spoiling the broth, but somehow or the other, everyone has to sit together to find out a political solution to this problem, because it's a matter of our collective destiny in this 21st century. Our destinies are interconnected to each other. So we cannot say that this is an Afghanistan's sole issue. We have historical, cultural, and religious ties with them, and we have always been propagating that this regional issue, all the stakeholders should sit together, and we have been propagating this stance. So what Foreign Minister has said, this is nothing new. This is just a reiteration of our fundamental principle stance that this political issue needs to be addressed by all the regional players.
And I think he went beyond just Afghanistan, because he was also referring to it in the backdrop of what recently happened between India and Pakistan. Salman, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, definitely. I think it's very important, and the timing is very important when our Foreign Minister is meeting his counterparts in China. One, they are obviously discussing the peace process and the dialogue. And definitely we are 23rd March is also approaching, so it's very the time is really meaningful when we also know that their fighter jets are also here to participate in that parade. That's a symbolic gesture which tells about the importance of Pakistan-China relationship and the significance of this relationship for the politics of South Asia. How important it is, for the stability and prosperity of the region, and the belligerence that was shown by India. The crisis that they wanted to erupt, that's a message for that as well, that future does not belong to such attitudes, such warmongering mantras that India and its elites are attempting. And also this reiterate the fact that both these countries are working in close coordination. Both these countries are on the same page, and both these countries have no agenda which would be detrimental for peace and prosperity. The agenda that both the countries are carrying is primarily specifically attempting to bring stability. That's why China is also taking part in the peace process that is going on regarding Afghanistan. China is playing its role. China has its own interest as well, but definitely every state goes like that. China is also engaged in with Pakistan on multiple levels, on multiple spectrums. And China has always played its role as far as the back channel politics is concerned. I would not say diplomacy. The back channel politics is about war, about crisis. We have seen Chinese role as well, that it is thwarting all the efforts that are somehow attempted to destabilize the region, or somehow when these powers like India and its allies, the nefarious design that they carry, because China believes that the future, the vision for South Asia cannot withstand such designs, such very limited and designs who have very short vision, which are only specific to certain political agendas, which are only specific to certain electioneering agendas. You cannot jeopardize the peace and prosperity of a whole region, which is connected to East Asia, and then it would be definitely in future connected to South Asia and other parts of the world.
Right. Well, there's also a foreign minister's strategic dialogue that is going to be conducted during this meeting and this visit of our foreign minister. Sir, what in your opinion are the strategic importance or points for Pakistan to be really discussing in this upcoming foreign ministers conference, sir? In your opinion, sir, if you could just list them out, what's the most important thing that right now Pakistan needs to be focusing on strategically?
First of all, to understand that we had been a strategic partner of United States for the past, around 70 years or so. So we withstood the United States as well as the West during the Cold War, and we had been their frontline ally during the war, Afghan jihad, to stop the onslaught of the Soviet Union. Then we participated as a major non-NATO ally in the war on terror. So that was a strategic partnership with the United States and the West. Unfortunately, somehow the United States focus changed towards India. So they saw India as a regional power, and they wanted to propagate it as a hedge against China. They wanted to keep Chinese rise in check, and so that's why they wanted to do. So that's how, and it started in year 2000, especially after the end of the Cold War. The United States focus slowly and gradually changed towards engaging with India as a strategic partner. So obviously, with the change, with the shift in United States, obviously there had been a vacuum. So we had to reorient our strategic shift as well. And obviously, Pakistan had very strong, historic, very strong relationship with China. So obviously, then we started fostering it further, and now that has reached to a strategic level. So in the past, we used to have a strategic dialogue with the United States that has over the period of time it ended, and now we are fully integrated in the vision with China. CPAC is one of the manifestation. Our close defense collaboration with China is another manifestation. And the important thing is our meeting of the minds. Pakistan and China, as Professor Saab has said, they are on the same page when it comes to regional understanding, may it be Iran, may it be Afghanistan, may it be Kashmir, or may it be India. So we do not want to be seen as a foe to any regional country, but at the same time, we would like to be seen as partnering towards regional peace together. And this strategic dialogue or whatever, it shows a solidarity between our two countries. It is going to further solidify our historic relations in all the fields. Now, as you see, we are economically integrating into each other with the CPAC becoming a reality in the near future. and somehow or the other it is seen with suspicion by the West as well as by India as well. So that is very unfortunate, of course, but it has to be, we have to show to the other countries of the world that this is one is our right to partner with any country of the world. And secondly, we are partnering with the other countries of the world for the regional peace and solidarity of
In fact, he went ahead and said that Pakistan-China relations is an all-weather relationship, and China is an anchor for regional stability. What exactly was he referring to when he meant, what did he mean by China being an anchor for regional stability?
Because over the period of time, China has acquired and attained the status of a major power, and it is in the process of becoming a great power, and it is acting like a major power. That's why it does firefighting, it does influence its political role in the region and outside the region. It is a P5 country, it is a permanent member of United Security Council, and it has emerged as a giant economy. So China is following a model which is very novel in international relations. It is not a model of offense, it is not a model of belligerence or model of trying to influence states by interfering into their foreign policies and strategic policies. But on the other hand, it does play its role in firefighting, in conflict resolution, in conflict management even. It has been playing its role, which is evident from its role in Afghanistan peace process, its role between Pakistan and India. It all the time is like advising both the countries, particularly Pakistan, because of its cordial relationship, that how we should go by the conflict. And at the same time, it also advises India that how conflict resolution needs to be done. And by the way, I also want to add that China at the same time, out of its advisory role, it also takes some actions. I would not say punitive actions, but practical actions where it thinks that now these states are crossing the lines. For example, I'll quote that a few months back when Modi was on his anti-Pakistan agenda, and he came up with this rhetoric of stopping Pakistan water and getting out of Indus Water Treaty, and this notion was made. Then very silently and secretly they closed down the distributory of Brahmaputra river, and it was a silent message that do not mess with the environment and the political ecological environment of the region. Do whatever you want to do, but keep this thing in mind. So at the same time, it also takes these actions as well, and there are all these symbolic gestures which eventually leads to stability and prosperity in the region. We have not seen in the last 70 years, and particularly after China has, in terms of economics, risen, that they have played any role. There is no past record of China supporting any proxy. There is no record of China supporting any regime, any particular regime or any particular political system, may that be democracy
or do any political engineering.
But what we have seen is in 99 Kargil crisis as well between both the countries, China played a very important role of again firefighting and diplomacy, and in the subsequent crises where India has always tried to create some space for a conventional war with Pakistan, and it has tried to create that space by citing very irrational, unjustified reasons. China has always come forward, and it has influenced both the countries to sit on across the table and resolve all the outstanding issues.
Well, now that Kashmir, Pakistan and India are both also part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, then what do we expect the SCO to play a role in trying to improve relations between the two countries? What do you think about that?
Definitely, SCO is an important platform, though at hand, SCO is not dealing with outstanding territorial conflicts between the states. It is not part of the core agenda. The core 4 agendas does include terrorism and economic cooperation and energy exchange. But SCO is a good platform where both these countries, these hostile countries, can use that platform, and that platform does provide a bigger picture. Like there are important countries, China is there, Russia is there. So it gives more justification and status to the process that is going on. But at the moment, I don't think so India would agree to it. because India is just stick to the stance, the 3 decades old stance, where they think that any conflict in South Asia is bilateral, and they would not invite, or they would not appreciate any trilateral or multilateral process. But definitely world is changing, times are changing, so they would need to give up this stance of just keeping it bilateral. Pakistan is open to bilateral dialogue on any agenda. Pakistan is open to a multilateral, trilateral dialogue, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization can be a very viable platform, because Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a very futuristic scenario, is a very futuristic organization of regional economic integration and political integration. So definitely with the help of China, Russia and all these big powers, since Pakistan and India have now attained the membership status of the organization, it can play a role. And if that could become a success story, China could further solidify the organization, because the conflict which could not resolved outside or under any structure, under any arrangement like UN or any other arrangement, if Shanghai Cooperation Organization does it, or it helps to improve relationship between the both, I think that would be a great credit.
Indeed. Let's move on to our second topic, and that is to do with the unfortunate events in Holland, sir. 3 people are dead and many have been wounded in an attack in a tram. What do you make of this, sir? We just saw this terrorist attack take place in New Zealand, and then a few days later we see what happened in Holland. Do you think that the two are related in any way, or that there is no connection, it is just pure sheer coincidence, and even the motives behind these two incidents are completely different and they should not be really compared to each other?
First of all, try to understand that the world has changed. We saw the world change with the end of the Cold War. It lasted for quite a long time, and when in 1991, when we saw the disintegration of former Soviet Union, the world had altogether became a strange phenomena. So there had been a vacuum in this, and at that time I remember there had been an important book which came by Samuel Huntington. It was called The Clash of Civilizations. So in that he had mentioned that with the end of the Cold War, the world is moving towards the clash of civilizations. As you see, we have 5 very ancient civilizations in our neighborhood, and the same thing happened later on. If you see that this neoconservatives, they created an Islamophobia as well. So it's debatable that Al-Qaeda was created for specific reasons, and later on ISIS or Islamic State was also created, and then this Islamophobia was created, and then it definitely affected the peace of the whole world. There had been very unfortunate incidents which were blamed at the door of Islamic terrorism. But now the world has seen that it's kind of a reverse phenomena, that the white people have started to take a kind of a revenge on Muslims. So terrorism in any manifestation is to be condemned, period. There are no two ways about that. Whether Muslims do it or any white person or Western country, it has taken place by the West. So the same thing. We have to first understand the mindset. What creates this fundamentalism or extremism in anybody's mind? This is very unfortunate. What happened in New Zealand, precious lives were lost. What happened in Holland, again, very unfortunate. But again, unless we understand the root causes of this terrorism by anybody, and I'm very glad that the eminent leaders, world leaders like Prime Minister Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, has come out in support of the Muslims when this New Zealand attack took place. And he said that Muslims in the multicultural and diversified society of Canada, Muslims are playing a very significant role. And the same thing. So terrorism conducted by any person, whether white or brown or black, has to be condemned. But unless we understand the root causes, either it is a repercussion of what is taking place in Iraq, Syria, or Libya, for instance, or even in Afghanistan, or most importantly in Kashmir. And it could be the white people are taking a revenge kind of a thing. This has to be changed. It needs a narrative or a mindset change which needs to be understood and addressed.
Absolutely. Salman, what's your opinion on this latest incident? What we know so far is that 3 people have died, 5 have been injured in this shooting on a tram. Security has been boosted at the airports and other key buildings. Mosques across the city have been shut down for a day. Finally, the police have said that the suspect has been arrested, and they still have not said what the motive behind the killing was. But according to some Turkish news agency, they say that it could be a family matter according to the relations of this individual who has been caught for this attack. They think that he shot some woman who was known to him, and then some people came to help her, and then he shot them as well. So it's a very different incident, and it cannot be correlated to the incident in New Zealand, which was a purely hate crime. Here, there is no such evidence as yet. What do you make of it?
Well, as far as the sad and tragic incident of New Zealand is concerned, there is a pattern involved, because the kind of planning was done and the kind of optics was chosen, and the guy who did it, he chose to film it and chose a weapon where he wrote all the names of all these persons who are in one way or the other connected to this white supremacy concept. So there is a pattern to it, but we cannot say that this particular event that has happened is connected to it or not, because since the timeline is very short, that's why some people might create a link between them. But investigation agencies and after some information, that then we'll be able to come up with the link. But keeping this aside, we are for sure about this connection of white supremacists across the Europe, particularly, who think, and in America as well, who think in the same way, who have the same ideology, who have same amount of hatred for, particularly for Muslims, out of all the political and social movements and developments that has taken place in the last 2 decades. So this movement is there, and one of these people generally depends. This one had planned it in this way. Otherwise, in the minor crimes, minor hate crimes does takes place every day in the length and breadth of Europe and in parts of America. But there are 2 important aspects. One, the tactical aspect of how it happened and why it happened and the organizational structure. 2, the difference and the lesson which is learned. The leadership character that is shown by the New Zealand's Prime Minister. And 3, the character that is shown by the social fabric of New Zealand particularly and Europe generally. The way they have reacted, I think we lack that kind of social fabric and social response in our part of the world, both in India and Pakistan, and we need to learn from this, that people from other faiths, people from different races, they have came out on the streets, they have come out loud and clear that they do not accept this kind of behavior, and that they have proven that this is a minority. This is a ethno-racial minority.
That's exactly what Pakistan and other Muslim countries have also been saying. They've all denounced ISIS and their activities. They've all denounced Al-Qaeda. They've denounced terrorism. And there's also this great debate of not linking terrorism to any religion, because it is not...
But Waqas, I'm talking about the social response.
Yes.
That social response that we give to people from other faiths, when something of that sort, God forbid, happens with them. I have not seen such kind of a social response in my society, which is we need to learn. Definitely,
I agree with you there. I agree with you there, sir. But we're talking about something much bigger over here, and that is this menace of the ideology of white supremacy and this fear of immigrants coming in and taking their jobs and them reacting against this particular perceived invasion. This entire idea is flawed from its basic creation, because even the white population of America specifically is an immigrant population. They are immigrants themselves. They were not born on the continent
soil.
of America. They have done one of the worst genocides in human history by eliminating Native Americans. So what are they talking about? This is the issue that we need to discuss. So if you could please shed some light on that.
Definitely. I agree with that. The threat from immigrants, as far as the intensity of threat is at social and economic level, that's fine, that's natural. Every society would feel that kind of insecurity if somebody is coming from outside. But societies and polities have a different reaction.
Salman, these cultures and these societies are built on immigration.
Like Brexit. I mean, Brexit also reflects the same
deep-rooted
insecurity.
Racism, yes.
But definitely, if somebody from other part of the world will come here, but this expression of eliminating and killing and taking up arms, that's really dangerous and that's not acceptable, and that is tantamount to terrorism. Actually, this is actual terrorism. Terrorism as a term is a very controversial term. We do not have exact definition, and it is used
we
in
were
different
discussing
contexts.
that just before the program with Major ADNAN. Would you like to also share with us your views on this particular issue?
Two things we must understand. Differentiate between the apples and oranges. Two things. Professor Saab is saying about the immigrants or migrants who go for economic prosperity towards those countries. This is another element. This is one of the elements which causes upheaval in those society, resentment, because obviously the jobs are taken.
But again, this is a very strange kind of an argument, sir, because if a job is available for a particular skill set, or if for a doctor or an engineer, and if I am not a doctor or an engineer, how can I complain about not getting the job? So it's really absurd.
But again, if you recall, presently again, France has seen two movements. The Yellow Vest uprising these days, unrest is taking place, and previously a few years ago there was another unrest in the streets of France because of the same migrants, because they felt discriminated. This is one element, and this, I believe, is a very, very minor element because the pie is too big in the Western countries.
The Yellow Vests have nothing to do with the terrorism issue, sir.
Yes, so the second element is the terrorism issue, in which I believe this white supremacy or whatever is what you are saying is linked to the clash of civilizations, which I mentioned in the first in earlier discussion. Understand that an Islamophobia had been created. First of all, a mindset, a narrative was built that Al-Qaeda is obviously 9/11 had been a very, very unfortunate incident, and subsequent events were also pretty unfortunate. So again, this Al-Qaeda and later on this Islamic State, whatever terrorism it has caused, obviously it has created a lot of resentment, a kind of a revenge feeling among the white people as well.
The point is that when these groups went about doing whatever they did, causing mayhem and terror.
Which groups? Muslims?
ISIS and Al-Qaeda that you're referring to, sir.
Yes.
They were denounced by all the major scholars of Islam. They said they have nothing to do with Islam, and they also, they drew a line and they stepped back from these fringe groups and said, we have nothing to do with them. Now here you have a different situation where Mr. Donald Trump needed to tweet out, and that is our third topic as well, which is connected to the second one, sir, that he's being blamed for the attack in New Zealand, and it is, the fake media is at its best trying to discredit him, and they'll have to try really hard. And at the same time, he does not really believe that white nationalism is on the rise. And that is really the strange bit, because according to American Homeland Security, they have identified white supremacist terrorism as a growing risk of domestic terrorism within the United States. So we have a disconnect between what the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is saying and what all the other leaders of the Islamic world have said by distancing themselves and disassociating themselves from the actions of these terrorist groups.
So understand, you have yourself answered, reply to your question, that when this so-called Islamic terrorism was carried out, everyone, including the Muslim leaders, they condemned it outrightly. Now the same thing is happening in the West. The saner leadership in Europe and New Zealand and Australia, they have condemned it. Why the United States has not done it? It is obviously, we know that for the past about 2 or 3 years, it has been related to their politics. So sometimes a leader does say something or does not say something only because of his political capital. So obviously, we know that President Trump has become American president only because of the white votes. So he had made a commitment towards them. So this is his political capital, which he does not want to lose in the next forthcoming elections. So, but again, the saner elements, the world today is integrated into multiculturalism. There had been all kinds of people in different countries of the world. People have realized their interdependence. Our destinies, as I mentioned, are interdependent upon each other. So we have to understand the threat, and then we have to condemn it, and then we have to rectify our societies as well. The Professor Saab was saying that we should, in our society, in Pakistan as well, we should be forthcoming in condemning what happened, whether it is conducted by a white male or it is conducted by any Muslim.
Indeed, sir, there's no argument as far as what Salman was talking about in terms of condemning any, act which is against,
humanity.
Absolutely. So we do condemn those acts. The point here now is, sir, that what we're seeing is this rise in the fear that is being shown by white nationalists, this fear of being taken over, of, by being eliminated by the hordes of migrants that are entering into the... And this is one of the reasons why Donald Trump has also been talking about building the wall on the Mexican border. So all these things are really connected, sir. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is economics. And it is those who feel economically deprived or economically challenged that take up these issues such as terrorism, and they give it the color of any religion or ethnicity. They want to, draw from some kind of a perverse inspiration. That's the real problem, sir. That is the fight that we need to fight, which is make right-thinking individuals see beyond this very vile rhetoric, which is demonizing another human being because of his race or his color, the color of his skin or his religious beliefs. This is where we have to draw the line, sir, that you cannot confuse that with economics.
And allow me to say just a brief statement.
So,
well, first of all, United States is not the world. So first of all, when we say people have condemned, the international community has condemned whatever happened in New Zealand, whatever happened in Holland, so it has to be condemned. So what United States does for political purposes, obviously it affects our lives, but again, we cannot focus or limit our thinking towards just a superpower only. We have to consider we have a United Nations, we have other countries of the world, and we have to understand their thought as well. Now, allow me to say that, I, as a Middle East observer, two things happened in Canada, since I live in Canada. So two things, and I highlighted as well in my different papers as well. Canada declined to participate in the war on Iraq in 2003 during the Liberal government of Prime Minister Chrétien. Then Prime Minister Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, when he took over power in 2016, he withdrew air jets from our military airstrikes against ISIS in Iraq. So both things I highlighted at public forums as well. I said, I think that these two decisions, political decisions, Canada had to pay a cost for that as well. But these two decisions saved Canada from different incidents like 7/7, the London train bombing, Madrid bombing, Charlie Hebdo, and other events which took place in Spain as well. So if the political leadership in the West understands the political ramifications of taking on on any civilization, even a Muslim civilization or not. But again, the same thing, the menace has to be eradicated, but there are ways and means to do that. If you envelop it under the whole religion or whole Muslim community. So then again, resentment will be created against the in the Muslim community as well. And again, the same thing in the reverse. When
so it will be a perpetual cycle of hate. So the question here is how to break this cycle of hate. Salman, any ideas?
I think definitely greater understanding would break this cycle of hate, and I think that is happening as well. Though international media is not supportive of breaking the hate cycle. There are some biased research groups or researchers whose work is not to be biased. They are supposed to come with a very objective, very balanced research. But they are also not trying to break because they are connected to the foreign policy agendas of particular regimes and countries. Otherwise, if you see, I see great hope in, that's why I emphasized over the social response of Christchurch incident, the response amongst the people, response amongst the masses, that now they are creating more understanding, because obviously they are dealing with people. They understand how Muslims people live and how they create the space from themselves, and what actually it means to be a Muslim. It does not mean to be this or that. So they are realizing the fact that, and they are not buying what international media is portraying. Like initially, international media was not even calling this person terrorist, but eventually the pressure that was exerted and the nuisance that was created, and then credit goes to the Prime Minister of New Zealand as well, who very categorically said that this is an act of terrorism and this is terrorism. So now international media is also, and I'm sorry to say the UK media was the most biased of all, which is thought to be the most mature media of all. So there are these processes, these inward and outwards processes which takes place, and with the passage of time, like after 9/11 itself, hate crime really was on the rise in America. But with that, there was a perpetual cyclical process of understanding, of learning, of people started to read about Quran, and the different analysis of Quran were read, and they developed more understanding, and eventually that hate decreased at public level. Same is the case in Europe, same is the case in New Zealand as well. Now people are more and more interested in what the Islamic theology means, how they talk and how they walk, and what kind of response and what kind of social structure is there, how do Muslims live. So I think that's also a parallel process which just takes place.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think we leave it at that. Thank you very much for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World.
My pleasure.
Well, you heard the conversation, and as always, we like to say, please draw your own conclusions from what you've heard. And on that note, it's goodbye.